Hey, it's Jillian Barberie, another episode of Ask Jillian, and with me always is Lizzie.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you, but really happy, not that I'm, not loving you, Liz, but really happy to have our guest today, our special guest, Debra Tate, who's been friends with me for over 2 decades. Hi, Deb.
Hi, Jillian.
It's so funny to see you and talk to you like this because we've known each other. I'm going to say Ariana, your daughter, I don't know how, I remember she was 17 the first time we spoke. I'll back it up. We met because I, at 11 years old, read Helter Skelter, and I wrote Vincent Bugliosi a letter and said, thank you for keeping these monsters behind bars. Fast forward.
And he was the lawyer on the case, correct?
He was the head lawyer. He and Stephen Kay.
That is correct.
Stephen Kay, who ended up doing so many things at the end and going to all the parole hearings with the families, including Deb. So long story short, I come to Hollywood and I get a computer and I'm typing in because I think they were lobbying for maybe one of my co-hosts to get a star on the Walk of Fame. Maybe it wasn't that early, but I was like, Sharon Tate needs a star on the Walk of Fame because she's amazing and what happened to her is horrific and her life was cut short. So I started looking into it. I saw that there was no star on the Walk of Fame. And I saw that you petition and that the Hollywood Council, it's Johnny Grant at the time, and they go through the list of names and they decide, who gets a star. And it costs $15,000. I think it was that at the time. So I contacted a person who ran a website, and through that Deb and I met. And I said, we should get your sister a star on the Walk of Fame. And I remember first of all, I called the house. It's the funniest. And her daughter answers. And, she's 16, which is what I have to look forward to. By the way,
very soon.
Oh my God. Ari's here today. And she's like, oh my God, I love her. When I first called, she's like, hello. And I said, oh, hi, mate. Speak with Debra Tate, please. She goes, who's this? And I'm like, oh, it's
Gatekeeper.
Yeah, yes.
Nice.
And I'm like, oh, because think of all the crazy people over the years. So I say it's me. And I hear the phone, it's like falling. And then Deb gets on the phone. And that was our initial conversation.
Yes, it was.
And you're like, I remember you saying to me, don't mind her. She's a 16 or 17-year-old teenager. And I started laughing. And now do those words ring in my head?
Very true. They are true today as they were 100 years ago, 200 years ago. You have a teenage daughter, it's going to be the same story.
Well, let's go back to being a teenager, because when everything happened to Sharon, you were, and if those of you who don't know, the Manson murders, Charles Manson's family went in and murdered Sharon and all of her friends on a horrible night in August of 1969. You at the time were 16?
I was 16 at that time.
And then your younger sister, Patty, was 11. She was Ruby's age. So
Sharon was
26.
Your big sister to
Yes.
both you and your sister.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Wow.
And she was an amazing woman, right?
More of a big sister to me, simply because of the age difference. When Sharon left my family home at 18, actually she left a little bit early. She emancipated and left early. But when she left home, Patty was only 3 years old. So there was not
The connection.
And then died when Patty was 11 years old. And of course, Sharon had an amazing career in between. So there wasn't as much interaction with the younger sister.
Whereas you were a
Simply because
teenager.
of the logistics. I was a friend that was integrated into her social circle. I went to the private clubs with them, dinners with them. Her friends were my friends
You
then
knew Roman
and
well.
now.
Yeah.
And
still to this day. And so when Sharon's life was sort of opening up and evolving into the emancipation, because she was doing beauty pageants from a very
Correct.
young age, and she was starting to take acting lessons. Is that when she moved here? Because she was born in Verona?
No, she was in Verona. She graduated high school.
Who was born in
Verona.
Texas?
Everybody but Patty was born in Texas. Mother would run across borders, state borders, just to drop us in Texas. Sharon was born in Dallas.
In Dallas,
Yeah.
because Deb's father was
Military.
right? So he was an interesting man, Colonel Paul Tate, in and of himself. He would travel. Also, wasn't a big fan of seeing his daughter so beautifully put on different posters and ads. Is that true, or was he protective, or did he understand her beauty?
Well, that was a double-edged sword, because I can certainly see it in pictures. He was not a fan of people lurking at any of the three of us. You know, he was a very good looking man and had his young manhood still in mind. He knew what they were thinking.
Yeah.
As a father of three beautiful daughters, that's got to be a rough road. So he was
Absolutely.
very protective, but yet at the same time, he allowed her to model astride a missile, a Nike missile in Daisy Duke shorts and a tied up shirt. And she was 15 years old at the time.
Wow.
That famous shot was being taken while my little sister was being born. So mom was in the hospital having
And I want
Patty because she may not have gone for that shot. But during different photo shoots, Dad allowed the U.S. military to use Sharon as their private poster person.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to go back to, because I don't think I knew this. So you're the middle sister.
Yes.
You've lost both your older sister and your baby sister?
Correct.
Oh, wow.
So-
wow, Deborah.
Yes.
That is.
Patty ended up passing. Tell us about Patty at 42 of breast
Of
cancer.
breast cancer. And I was diagnosed with breast cancer a little over a year and a half ago, year and a half and change. And
And Jennifer, the Valley of the Dolls, the character that
Sharon
is
was
played by
played,
Sharon dies of breast
breast
cancer.
cancer. She actually takes her life because
of
having breast cancer. Her character's mother made her feel as
Very
if
hard
the
on her.
only way that or reason she was
Worth.
Yeah, all of her self-worth was tied up with her boobs and her looks.
Yeah.
So she took her life because she was diagnosed with breast cancer. We're talking the character here.
Right,
Just to
the
clarify.
character. Yes, yes. Sharon
So
didn't have any
in
of the
real
above.
life, my little sister was diagnosed and on
At
her
what age, Deb?
40.
That's young.
It is.
And her tumor was already, I was told, almost 2 inches square, bigger as a golf ball under the arm. And she chose, for whatever reason, to stick her head in the sand and not go get a mammogram. Her doctor, she said, was very matter of fact about it and said, "Oh, I think you should go get a mammogram," instead of, "You need to go get a mammogram now," you know. And
And
Patty
when-
sloughed it off.
I remember when you sent me her medical reports and she said something's off. I remember you saying this.
Yeah.
It looks like it could be. And she's such a self-doctor, self-healer, self-everything, okay? She does not fuck around. So she said, I feel that this could be stage 1. Long story short, a lot of time went by. And we ended up going to Bedford Breast. We wanted the best. We researched it. And we found Dr. Leslie Memzik in Beverly Hills. Deb goes. We're sitting and we meet Dr. Memzik. Right away, I liked her. Did you like her right away?
I did. I really liked her.
This is for your breast cancer.
For my breast cancer.
Your breast
now,
cancer.
I had already been diagnosed, but I only had Medi-Cal because
Yeah.
I don't, contrary to public belief, people think I'm very wealthy and I get paid for all of
Yes.
the television
No,
I
she
do.
doesn't.
I do not. I never made a dime.
She doesn't get
I
paid to
do-
go and keep the killers behind bars. I'm
No, I
sorry.
don't get paid for that. And I also counsel probably hundreds of thousands of victims across this country. You know, whenever they need somebody on the other end of a phone and they're going nuts, I take phone calls all day, all
So
night.
she's
all
an
day, all night,
advocate.
and never take anything for it, nor would I if anybody offered. It's by the grace of God that I've come through, and I don't believe that I should hold people hostage when they need help.
Financially.
And the help,
Yeah.
Financially.
Right.
I just jump in and I help. So I'm not a wealthy woman. I had Medi-Cal, and of course their services are really, really bad. They'd rather kill you than heal you.
Yeah.
So between my knowledge and their knowledge, and I got a great gal on the mammogram. She gave me a free sonogram, and she found it when it was just 3 centimeters.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
And
enough
then
to...
I couldn't get, they wanted to give me a varicose vein doctor to remove the cancer. And
believe
I
that?
knew that would kill me.
Can
that
you
would be
believe that?
sign my death certificate right now.
I said,
That
no.
makes no
We're
sense
going- no.
whatsoever.
I wanted the Bedford Breast Cancer Center. I lusted after it and said, I called and they didn't take any kind of insurance. And I went, okay, dismiss that. Step in, Jillian.
Well,
she
they
made it happen.
They got it done. And I remember I didn't know a freaking thing about breast cancer. Fast forward, I get diagnosed whenever a year and a half later, but I knew exactly where to go. But same scenario. So she knew. And what I loved about Bedford is that they did this surgery on her for breast cancer. And they also, I think preemptively, took out some of your lymph
They
nodes.
did. They took out 2.
She said, I didn't like the look of them, so I went ahead and did it. It wasn't something they had discussed before, if I'm not mistaken.
We did not discuss it at all before. There is a dye that they inject
That's right.
into the tumor while the tumor is still in your body and living, and then any cancer cells along the vein path
Light up, sort of.
light up to cobalt blue, and usually your lymph nodes would light up too. Well, my lymph nodes did not light up, but she had an intuition. She said, just for shits and giggles, I took out 2. This is after I woke up. I took out 2. I said, fine with me. As far as I'm concerned, you can have everything. I would have preferred to have gotten a total mastectomy.
Yeah,
over
which
it,
is like a double mastectomy.
to be safe. Rather, I was always mad at my little sister for opting for a lumpectomy when I knew, because I'm the great investigator, that she was not a candidate for a lumpectomy, and she was in remission for a year. The next following year, it
She
came
didn't
back
follow
and
up.
it took her. It took her
At 42, you said.
at 42
So young. Did she have
with
children?
3 young children.
Oh, no. Oh,
So then that brings us to Doris Tate, who is Deb's mom, who to me is the original amazing advocate for everything, because I'm sitting here at 53 thinking, how old was your mom when Sharon was taken?
Let me see. I believe she was 44.
44 years old.
My mother had Sharon when she was 18.
And so when you take us back to that day, I know that your last night with Sharon was watching the moon landing at her home.
Correct.
In Benedict Canyon, where everything happened. You went up there, your dad, your mom, and Patty?
Yeah.
Everybody. So the
Yeah,
whole
the whole
family,
family.
watched it in her room on her bed?
Right,
kind of
because
thing?
that's where the TV was. Back in the days when the household only had one TV.
It was in Sharon's bedroom.
That is correct.
How come she didn't have it in the living room? I'm just
I
curious.
think at one point in time it was in the living room, but in her extremely pregnant state, she
was
moved
spending a
it-
lot of time in the bed, for sure.
Actually, in between the bed and the pool, because the
So
swimming
hot.
pool, it was not only hot, but that's where she could achieve weightlessness and takes the weight off the back, and basically
It feels so much good. Better to float.
Much better to float.
So you guys watched it and then said goodbye like a regular goodbye.
Right.
And Roman was still filming in London?
That
Was
is
he-
correct. He was due to come back at any time, you know.
He was editing, correct?
He was not editing. He was actually writing. He was doing The Day of the Dolphin, which Sharon was going to play the lead in. I think he tentatively had made arrangements with Jack Nicholson, so it was going to be Jack and
so
Sharon.
he was in pre-production.
Pre-production,
Oh.
exactly.
Okay.
People don't realize what a swinging 60s character Sharon was in the London scene. And I remember YouTubing, it was her and David
David Hemmings.
Their big night out. And
Yes.
it was like, welcome. We want to introduce you to this incredible up and coming actress, Sharon Tate.
Was
And
it like
so-
a lifestyle talk show?
It wasn't even a talk show. This is how cool and advanced it was. They just sort of followed her through the streets of London, looking at different shops, vintage boutiques, to the Playboy Club in London, which was hip and happening. Isn't that where she got married?
It is.
Yeah.
Well, that's not where she got married. She
had
got
a
married in
reception?
the
Courthouse?
the courthouse. Yeah.
And then had the reception.
And then had the reception at the Playboy Club.
And everybody
Oh,
was
wow.
there. Everybody
It was an
there.
A-lister.
It was an A. I mean, if you look at pictures, I see everybody, and I'm just
Diana
like,
Ross, everybody.
Joan Collins,
Joan
David
Col-
Nivens.
yeah.
It was just everybody.
Everybody.
Were you too young to be there, or were you there?
I was not there. None of the family was there. We were in school.
Well, you were that,
We
that
were
age,
in
yes.
school.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time with them, even if the family lived somewhere else. I spent a lot of time with Sharon. As a matter of fact, I lived at her house that whole summer while she was gone, because people think they know what they know, but they don't know.
That's another thing.
Abigail was there to finish a task that Sharon had started with me, but was unable to complete because she had accepted a movie deal, right?
What was the task with Abigail?
To find me a private school where I could have my horse.
So Sharon and I believe Roman gifted you this horse?
Yes, Sharon gifted me the
Sharon
horse.
did.
Yeah. And
What was the horse's name?
Shalazar.
Shalazar.
I
such a
had
great
raised,
name.
she gifted me the horse when the horse was 6 months old, and the horse then, when Roman came on scene, and that was a trip where Sharon was introducing Roman to the family for the first time. Poor guy.
Oh my God.
Poor guy.
He's got to meet military dad.
And he still
can you
married her,
imagine?
so that's
Exactly. I met Roman first. We lived in Sausalito at one of the few bases I've ever lived on, but it was the coolest base. It's called Fort Baker. And
Is it on the beach?
It's on the beach. It's got its own private cove, old Victorian houses, maybe 8 of them. And
It didn't feel like a base at all.
not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
wow.
But in any case, she had me leave the cool base behind and meet them in Sausalito at the Sausalito Hotel. And she was trying to verbally prepare him for, and I guess he wasn't quite buying it. So I came in as support and said, no, this is exactly what you're going to see. Puff, puff, turn. That's the cigar going. Puff, puff, and then he takes it.
Your dad.
And turns it a quarter of a turn and does not say a word.
Oh, my God.
And with this cold, staring, green-eyed glaze makes you want to vacate the premises or walk to the other side of the street. He had a very foreboding.
Well, I know during the trial, there were very big concerns that he was going to bring a gun,
Right.
that he was going to do something. He's a colonel in the army. These people had just slaughtered his daughter. I'd be concerned too. That's a whole other interesting story we'll get to.
Right.
But now you're back home and you guys are living in Palos Verdes?
We moved back from the cool house in Sausalito to our family home, which we'd rented out while we did our 3 years in Sausalito. And we were coming back home. Dad was still active hierarchy at the Presidio
In San Francisco.
in San Francisco, because there are 3 bases, the Presidio, Fort Baker, and Fort Barry. All of Fort Baker and Barry, the mountains open up. That's why it was all this open acreage. And missiles come out to
Jeez,
defend
that's crazy.
Northern California.
Can't believe, imagine that.
I'm going to back up for a second. When I wanted my horse, I'm a big animal person, and traveling, it was always very difficult. My dad thought it would be the end of everything if
You
he
didn't
said,
have your
you've got to go ask the general. And then the neighboring 600,000 acres belong to the Indian nation. So he says, you've got to go ask the general for permission. And then you've got to go ask the Indian chief. Well, I did, and they said yes.
Very determined.
She's very determined.
Sharon got me Shalazar for, I think she was $500, and I spent 2 years training her. And there's wonderful pictures of Roman. We put Roman up there bareback. And he was
That's
going
something.
off sideways when she started trotting. And he said, oh, I think she's losing me. As he falls off sideways. We were all laughing, trying to hold it back, but...
I picture your dad and Roman. I know that your dad had a good relationship with Jay Sebring already. Didn't Jay have a connection up in San Francisco? of
Yeah,
some
he
sort?
came up there to start a Sebrings International
He
in
was a
San
hair-
Francisco.
Hair salon.
Very successful.
And so we got him a houseboat in Gate 6 in Sausalito.
Okay.
And Jay was like my big
brother, yeah.
you know.
And he was always in love with Sharon.
It's
There's
a
no doubt about
Tate
that.
thing. We don't like discarding
People.
people. They're very, very valuable because when you are uprooted from your life every 3 years, when you have a connection with somebody,
You don't wanna lose
you
it.
don't want to lose it. So their relationship had gone totally platonic. People would like to fantasize that there was more
Yeah.
there. Jay realized that he screwed up when she actually left him. But there's no going back. Once we're gone, we're gone. But they were still very
Good friends, which is
very good friends.
speaks volumes of their two
Right.
personalities.
Right. I think he was waiting around hoping for Roman to make a mistake, in which case, had it happened organically, he would have gone back in for round 2.
Which brings me to, and we were going to get to the whole Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and your involvement in that. The portrayal of his character by Emile Hirsch, I thought was really interesting. I thought the Steve McQueen character was interesting, and certainly Margot Robbie as Sharon. But we're jumping ahead. You had mentioned Abigail Folger. People don't realize Abigail Folger was heir to the Folgers Mountain Grown Coffee, who was there that night. She was due to go back to San Francisco, I believe, the next day to visit her mother.
To visit her mom, exactly.
Inez. And then Wojtek Wajkowski, who was her boyfriend. And then Stephen Parent, who sadly
was related to nobody and knew nobody, just except the caretaker next door.
William Garrettson.
Wrong
who was
place, wrong time.
William Garrettson was the caretaker whom he had exchanged numbers to get a stereo. So he showed up. He was only 18, and he was the first to go. These killers, I want to add, at the time, it was Tex Watson, it was Linda Kasabian who drove the car, it was Patricia Krenwinkel, and it was Susan Adkins. Deb, you have been to every single parole hearing. When we talk about the death penalty, and I'm a big advocate for it, it got overturned in California in 1971, so they didn't have to go to die. And when people say to me they're against the death penalty, I always say, well, you know, the person who died, their loved ones now spend their life going to hearings. That's if there's one murderer. In this case, there were many. So you've spent, as your mother did, a lifetime going to parole hearings.
Nobody has spent more time than I have. And the reason I just want to clarify that is when Marcy's Law was passed, the rules on who could and could not speak at parole hearings changed a little bit. Before, mother could only go to the hearings of the Manson family members that were actively involved with taking Sharon's life.
So that would be Tex and Susan and Patricia. Now, your mother was not able to speak. I want to go back, actually.
Yeah.
Let's backtrack. Now you are a teenager. She's your sister. She's a huge movie star, married to a major movie director, living in Beverly Hills. And then you're down in your home in Palos Verdes.
That's right.
Rancho Palos Verdes? Is
Yeah.
it? Okay, so now what day is it? How do you get the news? And what happens next?
Well, it's August 9th. Mm-hmm. And it was unbelievably hot. We were in the middle of a heat wave. We were unpacking the boxes, preparing the home, and my little sister's watching cartoons, and Mom and I are working our booties off, trying to get the house ready, because we know we have a baby coming. You know, this is all, we've got to get settled, and we've got to get settled now.
Because you're going to be there for Sharon and go
We're
help her.
going to be there for Sharon. Sharon had
She's
a room
due in
that
2
was being,
weeks.
being prepared for Mom. It's, you know, I went through it much, much later. I mean, after these events, but every woman I know that has children, it's a very scary process. Even when you want it and you're praying for it, you want your mommy, you know, and Sharon was no different. So on the other side of the house, there was a little room with a single bed being prepared, and that was for my mother. And my mother did the same thing for me. She did the same thing for my little sister, you know, taught us the first ropes of motherhood.
So the plan was that she was going to move in and be there as a grandmother.
We had to. That was a vast possibility. We have young Roman and Sharon, and Roman's working and Sharon's going to be working, and, you know, people not knowing exactly what they're doing. New mothers never know what they're doing. Grandma. It was the logical choice. So we had marching orders to get the Palos Verdes house ready. Patty and I would be going back to school. So this all had to happen pretty quick. And to move an entire family home and get it settled, ready for 2 big ones to go to school, Mom to leave to go help the oldest with a newborn baby. It was serious. So, I mean, I was working myself silly. There was a knock at the door. Thankfully, there was a knock at the door, and there was a little neighbor lady with a coffee cake in her hand. And Mom said, "Come in, I'll put on a pot of coffee." And I took that opportunity to go jump in the shower because I was hot. I was sweaty. I was working hard.
It was one of the hottest summers.
Yeah.
And the day before we had talked about everyone saying, oh, I was invited to Sharon's house.
Yeah,
Nobody
no
was invited.
party.
There was no party.
There was never a party, okay? Never a party, never any El Coyote. Oh, who has on swimsuit bottoms, gets up, gets dressed, comes home after a restaurant and puts on the same clothes that she was lounging around in all day long? That just doesn't happen. If you're a pregnant lady, you come in and you put on a pair of comfy, some comfy little short T-shirt thing and maybe some granny panties over your big belly, and then call it a day.
The day of, she did have, it was Joanna Pettit over. They had a little light lunch in the backyard and floated in the pool.
And not Joanna Pettit and friend. The friend was going to come. The friend was just a barely acquaintance of Sharon, had met a couple times. But Joanna came with her son.
Were very good friends.
And she had a 350 SL convertible Mercedes and a car seat for her child. There was no room for the other lady. So she was supposed to follow in her own car and never did.
And that night there was no party planned. And so now the next day you're going on with your life. You get in the shower. It's now Saturday morning, I would imagine.
I don't even know what day of the week.
And then the lady across the street comes in with a coffee cake. Your mom puts on coffee, and then
I go jump in the shower. I've got long red hair almost to my knees. I've got soap all over my hair, and all of a sudden, the shower stall door slides back. And I'm staring at my mother, sobbing. And she says, Sharon's dead. And then I'm fighting to get the damn door out of her hand because this other little lady who weighs about 82 pounds soaking wet is supporting my mother. Oh, and I'm looking at this woman staring at me naked and soap dripping down my face. I'm trying to get the door closed. But when she said Sharon's dead, and it didn't click, and I'm still fighting for the door. And then she collapsed down to the floor, and I went, holy shit, what's going on? So she got up, and the little lady led her partially crawling out of the bathroom and back to the kitchen. I didn't even rinse off or dry off. I wrapped one towel around my head, another around my body, wet-footed, flop, flop, flop
not
down the hall.
Not understanding what in the hell
And then I
is
got
going
in
on.
the kitchen, and tell me again, because she's sobbing and can hardly speak. Tell me again.
My God.
What happened? And with great pain, she informed me that my boyfriend, or ex-boyfriend, we were friends also at that time, Wayne had called and said that he was sorry to hear about Sharon.
Oh my God.
She didn't know anything. He was listening to the radio.
Didn't they think it was a fire or something? There was some strange reports coming out.
It came out. He had heard that it was a fire in Benedict Canyon. 5 people were dead, and it was unconfirmed, but at the house of Sharon Tate Plansky.
That's how you heard through.
So, but Mother didn't tell me all this. Mother just said, Wayne told her. So I get on the phone.
With Wayne.
And my father, backing up a little bit, was intelligence and counterintelligence. I am my father's daughter. So I'm the voice of reason, and I'm tracking.
You're also an investigative, you could have been an investigative reporter. You could have been a cop, FBI.
Could have been a doctor.
That's just the way your mind works.
Yeah.
It's always been like that. Yeah.
So I got Wayne on the phone, and I said, what radio station? He says, I don't know, probably KHJ. I said, go out to the car and turn the radio on and call me back. It was KHJ. And so then I hang up. I practically hung up on him. I don't even think I said goodbye. And I called KHJ news desk. And I said, did you run a story? And they said, yes, we did. I said, what was the source of that story? They said they just heard it over the
Newswire?
Not
the
a newswire,
scanners.
like
Back then they had a police
Oh,
scanner.
geez.
Exactly.
And so it was very scattered information at this point. I don't think it was confirmed until William Tennant, perhaps.
Right. William Tennant went up that's how it got confirmed.
William Tennant was
Sharon's Roman's actually
manager
an agent. He was playing tennis at a private home. Mother had been calling Sandy was his wife.
Knowing that he was close in
They
proximity.
was close proximity. And Sandy said, he's on the court. We can't get him. You have to wait. Mom obsessively calling back and forth. So in between phone calls, I'm having to run to the lady next door's house to use her phone to do my investigation.
Because your mom's on her phone trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
Just obsessively.
Of course.
Oh, you know, if you call somebody and they say he's not here, he's on the tennis court, you know, I can't get a hold of him and is not forthright with any information, you don't hang up, pick up the phone and call the same person back again. You go to a, you know, plan B.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm running back and forth, trying to keep Mom together, trying to find out what's going on. I call the police. No, I called the fire department. I'm sorry, fire department. They
Because
said,
you
no.
thought it was a fire.
Yeah, we thought it was a fire. That's what they had reported over those scanners. Fire department says no fire at that address. I said, well, the location in Benedict Canyon, half of it's served by Beverly Hills and the other half is served by the Valley. So I called the Valley Fire Department. Did you service a fire? No, we didn't serve a fire. Called the cops. Cops went silent. Oh. And they said, well, we'll have somebody call you back. And the guy
Did
called
you
me
identify
back.
who you were?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Oh, God.
They asked me where my mom and dad, they asked me how old I was first. They asked me if my mom or dad was available. I said, Dad's not here and Mother is incapacitated. You have to talk to me. They never would confirm what had happened, but hours went by and nothing was happening.
That'd be torture.
And they started to ask me or make plans if I would come up because Mom couldn't do it. Dad was nowhere.
Where was your father?
Well, I actually, in one of the in-between phone calls, I had to call the Presidio. He was on the parade field marching a bunch of guys.
He was in San Francisco.
In San Francisco, you know, where they were full-colored brigades of men marching around. And I told his aide that I had to talk to my father now. The urgency must have sparred that man because he ran, as stories told, ran across the parade field, got Dad and said, you're needed at home on the phone. This is urgent, blah, blah, blah. Dad came in and Dad told me and everybody else, oh, I was sure that something happened to Debbie.
Oh.
Because I was the tomboy and an athlete and a equestrian and a gymnast.
The risk taker, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, God, she's, you know, jumped off the roof again. That's when I was a small child. The bigger teenage boys would convince me that I could fly.
Dad said, oh, yeah?
With the towel around my neck. Yeah, I fly all right.
That is you.
So anyway, I got little scrapes and bruises and broke bones and things.
So he assumed it would be.
He assumed
the
it
last
was
person
me
he thought would be her.
Would be her. He came back into his office and called me at the house. And I had to tell him, Dad, Sharon's dead. And I heard the phone hit the ground. And in the meantime, the LAPD is sending a car to come and get me. And I am dreading down to the core
to identify her
of my
sister.
body.
But do you still think at this point it's a fire?
No, we knew that something had happened.
Okay.
They said something had happened, but they weren't at liberty to say.
But they did say that
They
she was gone.
they didn't say who. They did not say the particulars. They weren't saying anything.
But you must
they
have known.
were going to, yes, from them wanting to send somebody to come and get me, to take me to the scene, which now, if I had walked in on that scene, as a matter of fact, William Tennant did walk in on the scene. Why did he walk in on the scene? Because he heard the same radio piece in the loop, when they would loop the news on the radio, that Wayne had heard when he got off the tennis court and he just dropped in on the scene. Nobody at the gate, nobody at nothing. He
prepared
walks
him.
in.
He walked in.
He
and
walked in cold. Now,
it troubled him
wrecked
for life. And he came, if I'm not mistaken,
devastating.
he threw up. I think he came out and was not, he was
threw
sick.
up. His life went in the toilet. He went homeless.
Jeez.
Then he went to Europe and tried to do a few things.
And this is a
that
man
didn't
who
work.
was a manager who did very well, who was
very well.
successful, represented major names.
He
and
had PTSD basically.
Oh,
from
it ruined
his life.
Completely ruined his life.
Not only just him, I remember taking you to do a documentary, and there was a police officer,
Yes.
and he is still to this day. This was just a few years ago, and to this day. And this is what the man did for a living. He's haunted. So I'm so thankful that you didn't.
I am too. And Bill Tennant, I mean, it took him probably 20 years. He was on the street homeless for 20 years, drug addicted, alcohol addicted, all because of what he had walked in on. Now, that being my beloved sister, if I had to go and do that job,
But they were taking you to do that. So
they were taking me to do that because there was no choice. But in the meantime, Bill Tennant got there.
So he was able to identify
and the
them.
cop car that had me in it, they radioed it and flipped it around and took me back home because they didn't need my help.
But was there part of you, because it's your sister and it sounds like your personality, were you desperate to get to her in some way for answers, just to see, just to have
that's a very interesting question. I've never gone back and visited that. No is the answer to that, because by then I'm a very spiritual person. Sharon and I were very connected. There was a chaotic thing happening in the air, and I could still channel in on energy, and I knew she was gone.
You did.
I knew she was gone, but yet there's all this chaotic energy going on, and I didn't hear a voice saying don't go, but I did have a very strong presence that I was not supposed to go. I just knew I was not supposed to go.
When you guys were... Did you watch any news? Because there were helicopters.
Horrible.
That's all it was.
It was horrible.
News crews, helicopters.
I sent Patty to the lady next door's home, Dorothy, was my
was only
mother's
11?
best friend. She was 11.
Yeah.
While all this was happening, I didn't want her to see her mother falling apart to that degree. I didn't want her to see me. I didn't want her to be in front of that freaking TV set with these news breaking stories things.
That's all it was.
It was just horrible. So I tried my very best to keep my younger sister, who was the youngest daughter, and kind of sheltered,
Yeah, you hope it. 11.
And 11.
11.
And it doesn't matter if they had the physical time together that Sharon and I did. That's her big sister.
Yep.
And this is an inconceivable act. And I just didn't want her to have to see that.
No.
Eventually she did see it. But in that moment, in that first 24 hours, I was hell-bent to keep her from seeing that and to keep her from feeling the chaos of my mother completely falling apart.
Your mother, who ended up being one of the most strong voices, she's the reason families are able to speak at hearings now. They were never able to speak.
Was it called the Marcy Law?
No, Marcy Law came after the fact.
Okay.
The lady that wrote Marcy's Law actually attended the meetings for parents of murdered children in our home for many, many years. Marcy was her daughter who was also murdered. So she
and your mom became close.
Friends. Yeah.
Now,
friends.
so when these animals get convicted and they go away for quote life, they're supposed to get death. Okay, fine. Now they get life.
That was called the Victim's Bill of Rights.
That your mother got passed.
That mother got passed, and one of the Victim's Bill of Rights addressed the issue of the next of kin being able to come and speak at the parole hearings, giving what is called a victim's impact statement. So that's...
Which you've done many.
I've done many.
Yes. And so I want to talk about a period of time where your mom thought, okay, those horrible people are away for life, and then I'm going to try to, pick up the pieces. And I think it was 10 years that went by.
10 years.
And
Only
what
10
happened?
years?
Only 10.
What
10
happened
years.
after that?
Steve Kay, the deputy DA, who
We love.
we absolutely adore.
Yeah.
To me, he is
a godsend. Yeah.
Well,
because Vincent went nuts at the end. I'll just say it, and
Yeah,
I'll
I
tell a
did.
story what he did.
Oh yeah.
Oh, he went crazy, and I have a story about what he did on Good Day LA, and my jaw dropped, but that's for later.
But Steve K is the real deal, did a lot of the work, actually prepared a lot of the legal precedent
For
that
Vincent.
went for Vincent.
Vincent,
but was
I think,
in the
liked
backseat.
he liked
He
being
was
in the front.
He's a megalomaniac.
Yeah, he liked the camera attention. He liked the watch not working. I think that's all his.
Exactly.
added.
Where Stephen was the worker
he's
bee,
the grunter.
the grunter,
yeah.
and did the whole thing, and then stood by us
Tate family.
before everything. The Victims' Rights Bill was passed. 10 years after getting quote unquote life in prison, Mom gets a phone call from Stephen informing her that the killers, Susan Adkins and Tex Watson and Patricia Krenwinkel, had accumulated 600, I believe, signatures for their release.
600.
And
Not
Stephen,
parole,
Stephen,
release.
Release, like
Paroled,
parole, but then eventually
yes.
that leads to
Release.
freedom. Yeah.
Yes, it's the minute they walk out the door, that's release.
That's release.
Okay,
Yeah.
even if they break parole, they're out there, and that's it. You know, that's the bottom line. So my mother's name was Doris Gwendolyn Tate. To anybody that knew her and loved her, she was Gwynnie. And Stephen said, "Gwynnie, do you think you can do better?" And I saw the lights go on for the first time in 10 years, because my mother was, the lights were on, but nobody was home.
Oh,
there were
that'd be
times
me.
that she was highly functioning, but it could be things that, I mean, I wasn't privy to, nor was anybody else. The way a leaf blew across the sidewalk and made a certain noise, and all of a sudden she'd go back to that day when she first heard the news, completely crumble. You know, or a song, or
Who
just
wouldn't?
what a
Who
thought.
wouldn't?
So she would be highly functioning and then not functioning at all. Highly functioning and up and down and up and down. And
Did that make
it
you
was
become the mother in some ways to Patty?
Well, I was the mother immediately. I would prepare the lunch. I would make sure it was either a prepared lunch or I had school money. She would come home from school and I'd sit her down. Do you have homework? The same that any parents do. I tried my very best to keep the house.
When your mom was down, would she stay in her room?
She'd stay in her room.
Because I think it was such a public tragedy, but privately, the trauma of it just had to be everlasting.
And you couldn't, it was like being a prisoner in your home, because the media was in the driveway, at the door for weeks and weeks, actually turned into months. It was a media circus.
And to tell you how bad the media was, they went to Stephen's parents, I think it was Janet, sister, and they saw a picture. You know, when back in the day on your TV, you'd have a picture of your school, you know, in a frame.
High school picture.
Yeah, they fucking stole a picture of him, right, out from the parents' home, and they put it up on the news. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't the mother see a picture of her son on the news?
That's correct.
And this is how they were brutal. The media was disgusting. And because add to that, it's a famous, beautiful woman who's she's giving birth. Like if she would have given birth that day, the baby would have been completely fully and healthy. She was 2 weeks away.
She was viably pregnant. So baby would have been born.
At that day, it could have been born and had a perfectly healthy life. She was 2 weeks away. How many people give birth 2 weeks before they're due? Everybody. So it's a complete circus. And how fast does your dad get back?
Dad got back pretty damn fast.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't see Dad when he first got back. He went
to the scene?
To the scene.
No.
Yeah. Dad went to the scene. And by the time he got back to the house, he had spent probably a good 8 to 10 hours. I'm just guessing. God. I don't know how long. I'm sure that he wasn't walking up and down the street. I'm sure he was there. He was interviewing cops. And he was disturbed. He expressed the fact that he was disturbed about how they were handling the crime scene.
Trampling all. There are pictures. I can look at the crime scene photos to this day and say, holy shit. There were pictures of people just walking everywhere. Willy-nilly. And also, I know there are famous ones, and I don't know if it was for life, where Roman was sitting and he's standing at the opening of the door where they had written pig in Sharon's blood. So your father saw all this before Roman, because he didn't fly back, I think.
Right.
He came back a little bit after, because he was in England, so he had to
get a flight.
Yeah.
called Roman and thought I was the first one to call Roman for many, many, many years.
Oh.
But indeed, Bill had got to him first, thank God. I just remember I had to get, after Dad, Roman on the phone, and he came to the phone. In retrospect, I heard him crying and broken even before I said hello, you know? So he had already heard, but he came to the phone to talk to me.
Who was Bill?
Bill Tennant. He's the one who saw the
He
bodies.
called him too.
Yeah. And so what he said was there's been a tragedy at a house. And didn't he
Right.
say whose house? And
Yeah.
he said yours.
Yeah.
And, you know, from all of that, and if you go to archival footage, which I have, you see Deb and Patty at the funeral and you realize how young, and I know that you had a boyfriend at the time, but you're still a young girl. You're coming into womanhood, 17 now at this point, I think.
Yeah.
Patty, 11, with their black veils. You see Doris and you see obviously everyone.
I thought I was doing so well, but I look at those pictures and
you
I
were
can
baby.
tell I was just a shell. I was a
You were
shell.
shocked.
I was a shell.
The faces, the shock. I want to get back to your mother because I remember seeing videos of her facing these killers and not only not breaking down, having the wherewithal to say, calling them sir.
Sir.
Look,
Well,
sir.
that's a Southern thing.
She said, sir, to the man who did this. You know, what sympathy did you give my daughter? Blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh my God, this woman, I love this woman. She's a hero.
Do you feel like, because you said the light came on your mother, because it's like you can't fix it. You feel helpless. Like, what can you do?
Correct.
So when he says, can you help me with this? So that's where her advocacy was born.
That's absolutely the moment her advocacy was born.
That gives me chills.
And it gave
Yeah.
her a purpose.
Yeah, she could do
and the
something for
purpose
Sharon.
at that point, in that moment, was, now, this is conjecture, totally, but I think that she was in her full capacity and knew there was nothing she could do for Sharon
At this point.
at this point.
Except- Yes.
Make sure that these people, or do her damnedest to make sure that these people stayed
Never
where
see
they
the light of
were,
day.
because they will do it again. These are predatory killers.
They did do it again. They
They
did it again the next night to
and
the La
next
Biancas.
night, and the next night, and
Well,
the next night.
Did you just see the news report? They found some bodies out in the
No,
desert.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, interestingly enough. And automatically, because there's so many missing, there were so many hippies and hitchhikers back then. There's a Jane Doe, there's a girl from Montreal. Like, there are stories upon stories that link these people. But
I have a volunteer forensic team that's made up out of some of the greatest minds we have today. Forensically, a DNA specialist, mass spectrometer, human decomposition experts. And we know damn well that there are other victims of
Bodies
the
buried.
Manson family out there. And oddly enough, these scientific facts line up exactly with stories that were told by Manson family members in different periods. They weren't together in the same jail. Anyway, I wrote Charlie, and I asked Charlie about this. And
Charlie Manson
wrote me back. And it's an interesting little letter. I can see through and see the logic in his words. Okay, I don't believe that the man's insane. I think that he was a criminal genius, but I don't buy into the psychobabble bullshit. So it's like breaking a code. You take every third word out. There's 2 words of babble and 1 of sense. You know, this little code. And he drew a little picture exactly of the Panamint Mountains. If you were standing, because I went out there while the science team did their thing. I saw the science work with my own eyes. I ran it up the flagpole to then Attorney General of California, Jerry Brown, and asking permission to please allow us to dig out there. He was going to let that happen. As his foot went from Attorney General to Governor, all of a sudden I got a different answer from the office. And at that time, Jerry Brown came onto the show, and I'm watching the show.
Oh my God.
And this was, sorry, just to back up one,
Yeah.
just so I understand. This was to visit
Wow.
a ranch where the
To
Manson
Barker Ranch, where that's where they were arrested.
To dig and to see.
And where these stories given by the killers match a confession, basically, from Charlie. He had exes marking the exact coordinates that match with the GPS readings on all of these markers,
Like
coordinates of these markers that are present for human decomposition. Now, how the hell would he know that?
How would he know? Of course. And this is insanity, right? So before we get to the Governor Jerry Brown story, in answer to your question, Liz, when Stephen K. asked her, how well do you think we could do? Now Deb has a website up. It's called noparoleformansonfamily.com. And it's very easy. It's a click. You can go on. There's pictures of the people that are up. You click on their picture. You sign. It takes 30 seconds.
There's also a brief synopsis of who they did and what they
happened.
did. And you may agree with some and not with others.
That's all. But today it takes 30 seconds. Back when her mother, when the light went on, it was old school. So she would go to grocery stores.
I would hang out in front of Poncho's Bar in Manhattan
Wasn't
Beach.
the Inquirer like
the
big?
Inquirer
The
was
Inquirer
huge.
took out. So there was a page they did, and it's if you don't want these people, these murderers, out on the streets breathing the same air your kids do or you do, sign here. Guess how many signatures the Tate family was able to procure?
Through the National Enquirer.
Yeah.
Through
Yes.
everything, through their own running to the grocery store and handing out, getting people to sign. You know, when you go to the grocery store and people are out front, would you sign this? To the Inquirer. So,
I would go to bars. I would go
Yeah.
to churches. I would go to schools, anywhere where people would.
So the
would
bad
get
guys
together.
had 600 signatures, and then the good guys, I want to say
300,000, almost 400,000.
1,000.
From just putting your
Yeah.
feet to the ground,
Yeah.
a clipboard in your hand.
Which is how
Yeah.
That's incredible.
which is
Yeah.
how I'm still doing it today. Your voice matters. Okay, it does have an influence. A lot of people say, well, what can one person do?
A lot of people say they'll never get
they'll
out. And
never
I go,
get out.
Let me just
Baloney.
tell you, yeah, they will, because I've been to hearings with her, and you get 8 hours, 9 hours of their glowing review, and then the family speaks for 3 minutes. The parole board's getting younger. Yes, they will. And
It's
recently,
not just that. There's been laws passed by Jerry Brown,
The elderly law.
Elderly Inmate Act, which basically states whether they're suitable for parole or not. They must be given a release date, if they're over 60 years old.
I thought it was 65.
No,
Oh
it's
my
60.
God.
Do you know how much damage I could do?
Yeah.
At 60?
Yeah.
I'm not a little old,
No.
crotchety
and neither are
person.
they. By the way,
And
when they
neither
come in,
are they.
do try to look like it's like the Harvey
Yeah.
Weinstein. You
Yeah.
know, he's got the tennis ball and the walker.
Mm-hmm.
The first parole hearing I went to with you was Patricia Adkins. And she comes in all shackled and trying to look old. And I think with Charlie, he didn't even want to see you at some of them.
Charlie,
He didn't want to
Charlie
see her.
wouldn't come in with me. I went to 2.
He didn't show up. He's like, fuck it, I'm not going. I'm not facing her.
The guards said, that he came into the room because nobody went to a Charles Manson hearing, and Steve K didn't want me to go either. But he saw me sitting in there and said, "Who's that?" And they said, "That's her sister." And he said, "Put my leg shackles back on and take me to my cell."
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Crazy as a fox, right?
Yeah.
He knew. He's smart.
So you two
Yeah.
never face to face.
No, and I went 5 years after that.
And he
then
didn't show up again,
He didn't
right?
show up
He
again.
said, "No thanks," turned around.
And then he was supposed to have another, and instead he was in the hospital. I was told on the second one, the warden came in and talked to me, and without saying, because of HEPA laws, he said he didn't think that there would be another one. Well, there should have been another one. And another one after that. But Charlie was always in the hospital.
Infirmary,
in the middle of
something going on.
Something going
Yeah,
on that
he
he
had a lot
couldn't
of
do it.
health issues.
And even when they don't come in, if they forfeit at the last minute, the parole hearing happens without them.
Oh,
Yeah.
in their absence.
In their absence. But the attorney isn't there to put their spin. Everything is a spin. Attorneys do in there exactly what they do anywhere else.
It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So she
And
goes
they have no rules, but we have all the rules in the world.
on the family, on the victim side. It's the craziest thing. I remember the first time I was like, wait a minute. We've just spent 9 hours with a couple of breaks listening to her sob story and her lawyers speaking for her. And how much time do you get? So Deb would have 3-4 minutes to talk about Sharon and the impact on her family. And then the LaBiancas would get 3 or 4 minutes to talk about it. The Stephen K's family, and so on. And the last one that I did was Tex Watson, and they said another 5 years. And I spoke on behalf of the LaBianca family. JC Bring's nephew spoke on behalf of Jay, of course, Deb spoke. But Deb you're very matter of fact and less emotional. I remember saying to Tony LaBianca, I want to be able to say something at the end. I wanted to say to this man, you have fathered, I could not say sir, like your mom is so polite. You fathered 4 children. You denied Sharon the right to have one. Like I wanted to say, fuck you. But, having the impact, having at least the ability. But I was a little concerned because I remember one of the parole ladies she had a very sweet voice. Anyway, they did the right thing. But most recently, Leslie Van Houten got paroled. And she's the one everyone, she was the youngest, 19. Okay, so what? She slaughtered Rosemary LaBianca. I don't understand. I don't care how old she was. There are people at 19 get married and have babies.
Well, first it was, she only stabbed post-mortem 2 times with a pocket knife. Last parole hearing, she admitted to 14 times with a bayonet, and she doesn't know post-mortem or never didn't think about if it was she was alive or dead. These people, the fact is that they haven't even come to terms. In 50 freaking years, you cannot search your soul and play the footage back in your head and figure out if you were in the wrong or in the right.
They've never apologized
They've never
outside
apologized.
of only during hearings.
They will apologize phony.
You should see them. The acting that goes on. It's like an Academy Award winning. Like,
but have
no
never,
tears.
The LaBianca family for 19 years. At the end of every statement, they beg for a letter or something, and they will never give it to them. They get an actual. Leslie Van Houten gets a little passive aggressive smirk on her face.
I want to go back just to the point where. Because I think it's interesting, Jerry Brown on Good Day Late, and also how you two connected and ended up going to parole hearings together.
Well,
because that is
we connected over the star on the Walk of Fame. So I think Deb's got a lot of people that are sycophants.
When you called the house and the 16-year-old daughter,
yeah, but there's a lot of sycophants. Yes, but they knew that I was on TV, and I think you knew that I was real. But I'm also a reporter, like type person. I'm not a reporter, but like a on-air personality. I could be a fucking weirdo. She doesn't know. Yes,
Lord knows I've met plenty of them.
So she's got to be guarded and everything. Over the years, our friendship blossoms. She knows my intentions, and we had Vincent Bugliosi on Good Day Late. And I remember walking in, I think you had called me not long before, and one of the murderers, Susan Adkins, who had already had her legs, I believe, chopped off because of
brain cancer.
No, she had diabetes. And then she got brain cancer. And so she wanted out.
Amputated from diabetes.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then she got brain cancer. She had married in prison a lawyer, and he was asking that she be released on compassion.
A compassionate release.
So I was like, what the fuck is that? What? No. So Vincent Bugliosi comes on the show, and I walk into the green room, and I've met him several times, and I go to say hello. And I said, I'm a friend of Debra Tate's. Nice to see you again. And he was there to promote some book that he had written, some novel about angels and devils and blah, blah, blah. So I said, on a side note, can you believe that Susan Adkins this is the man that supposedly worked so hard to put her behind bars and the rest of the killers.
It certainly made him famous.
It certainly did.
It was the basis of his entire career. Now, mind you, after the Tate LaBianca trials, he quit the Los Angeles DA's office to go
didn't he end up going to the private sector? Didn't he end up doing, I don't know if he did defense attorney work, but I'll tell you what, he was a different person. When I said, can you believe she wants out on compassionate? Like, what compassion did... Before I could get it out, he goes, Jillian, stop. I am not here to talk about it. Some people are sorry for what they did and da-da-da. And I was so taken aback. I'm like, I don't give a fuck if she's sorry now, right? Like, what? She slaughtered Sharon. Like, what? So I'm taking steps backwards, and I'm like, I got to call Deb. I don't understand what's happening. So I'm thinking maybe she knows more than I do about Vincent. She's like, yeah, I think he's sprung a leak. He's lost it. So I'm like, fuck him. I'm going to say it on air. So I say it on air.
Jeez.
I'm like, can you believe this woman? I go, what compassion did she show Sharon Tate while she was doing what she did to her? And he looks at me and gets, again, very agitated and says, Jillian, I'm not here to talk about that. That's in the past. I'm here to talk about the book, da-da-da. But I was like, I'm showing some colors. Like, you're the man who supposedly was doing good against evil, and now what's going on with you? Or did you sell out somewhere?
He did. He sold out. They did a second filming of Helter Skelter, which was at the time in the early 80s the most viewed show.
It
on,
was a
on
made for
ABC.
TV movie.
Made for TV movie.
And it was huge. And this is before documentaries became really what they
So they did that, and that was off of his Helter Skelter book. And then they wanted to do it again, and he completely flipped the story, and these poor innocent kids, taken advantage of. That's where the concept changed about these people, because the public perception.
That's right. It was the 80s. You're right.
Yeah. The public perception was that the people, the murderers, were victims. Okay? He flipped it. And why? Because the man's a megalomaniac and he has to hear the sound of his own voice. So what if he's, changing his moral compass or whatever, just to have the opportunity to say, just to have the opportunity to make another million or two?
It fucking threw me for a loop. I will say that.
Yeah.
Well, and then Deb and I, we're like, what can we do? What can be done? So that's when I think we started brainstorming and came up with the website, the No Parole for Manson Family.com, and then got a bunch of signatures.
With the wonderful help of my AJ.
Oh my God. It was a godsend.
Yeah.
There was a few people that really helped with this, and AJ is like an angel. Was able to get 140,000 signatures. They don't just go, okay, it's online. No, you have to get them printed out. We had to go to fucking Kinko's up in Sacramento
Kinko's,
and have like filing rolling dollies filled with boxes of paperwork to show up at the governor's office. And at the time, it was Jerry Brown. And we just showed up unexpectedly. And what happened from there, Deb? Then they say, oh, the governor's just left the building.
Just left the building.
Oh my God,
it's funny. He was just there with a Dalai Lama 5 minutes ago.
Out the back. Okay.
Yeah. Of course, I can see through the glass the woman that says he's not there standing in the doorway talking to someone. It's a total bust. Okay, he's not there. Then who are you talking to? The chair? You're talking to the chair lady? The empty chair.
They were able to put all the stacks. Some of the LaBiancas came up. It was Lou
and Tony.
And Tony. Tony is Lino LaBianca's son. I want to mention on a crazy note, and I don't know if this is true. I've read it. It's in Helter Skelter, but you know much more about these things. That when Lino and Rosemary were coming back from a boating trip the next night, while they stopped off to get food, and she saw the front page of the paper with Sharon's picture, and she was talking to the newspaper guy outside, and she said, oh my God, this is horrible. And this was about midnight, and like 1 a.m. she would be the next victim.
Correct.
Oh. Can you believe that? And Manson actually went in and tied them up and left, and then the others came in and did the business.
That is correct. Well, Manson tied them up. The others were there, but he left.
And he acted like, you're going to be fine. Don't worry.
Right.
He didn't want them to panic.
Just a robbery.
Because he felt the night before was too
chaotic.
Well,
too messy.
Because people were running all over the place for their lives. We left the papers, and Governor Jerry Brown, again, that was for Leslie, wasn't it? Was that for Leslie the first time?
It was for Leslie. That's why the LaBiancas were with us.
Because here's a woman, like, really? She's going to get paroled? And he overturned it. Then Gavin Newsom comes into power, and we're like, uh-oh, because he's more liberal and he doesn't want the death penalty on the docket. And I was very skeptical. Deb, she never goes in like, oh, we've got this, ever, because you don't know. You don't know.
No.
It's a crapshoot.
You have to fight. You have
fight.
to fight for your life. Never assume anything. And actually, I thought when Gavin was elected, I thought, oh shit, here goes everything. Because Jerry is an extreme liberal, but Gavin was just a little more liberal.
Yes.
But I must say the man has done right.
He overturned it.
By us.
Yep.
And by a lot of other super heinous criminals. Now, I have to really stress the fact that I am grateful that I get to go and speak up against these killers, even though it is a daunting task. I at least have the ability to say something. Think of we are one of 5 states that still has the position where a governor can overturn a parole board's decision. What about all the people in all of those states where you don't get any say?
You don't have a say.
You have no say.
You could get a million signatures.
You don't
and
have
they don't care.
the governor's safety net. So thank God. Gavin, I was wrong.
Yes.
Gavin is in his
I
right
had faith.
mind.
I did have faith. I said, okay, got down to this. I'm like, okay, we follow each other on Twitter. If I have to send him a DM and say, please, you have children. I don't care how old these people are getting. Their mindset is it's a whole different. And by the way, the ones that aren't in prison, they still have websites that are dedicated to.
Not only that, they're all still friends. Okay.
Oh yeah.
They all still have
members of the Manson
That
family.
is correct.
Oh yeah.
That is correct. They still communicate. If these people were reformed in any way, shape, or form,
they wouldn't have anything to do with each other.
They would have nothing to do with each other. Nothing at all.
You know what you earlier said, I could have been this or I could have been this. And then you just said how grateful you are that you had this opportunity to be this advocate. I just think, gosh, on that day that you found out your sister had been murdered, I mean, your life took a completely direction forever.
A really hard turn.
Yeah. Was forced on you.
I don't want to say harder than other people, but Dad retired to go and go.
Didn't he live in the mountains for a while?
He went undercover.
No?
He went right back. As soon as the funeral was over, he went right back to Sausalito and lived on a houseboat and went undercover there because there was a reason for him to believe that Jay may have gotten in with some dicey people. So, and his jump off point was going to be Sausalito. And he witnessed some hardcore stuff, not having anything to do with Jay, but Black Panther activity and stuff that he turned in on. So not only was my mother out to lunch, my dad was out crawling around in the bushes looking for clues.
Yeah, like a sleuth, like he became his own detective.
Well, that's what he did in the military.
Yeah.
G2 is intelligence and counterintelligence. He was a spy. My father was a spy.
And he spied. Didn't he go to the house?
Killer.
And
yes, he did.
He went to the house and laid in the bushes waiting to see the comings and goings. And to see bikers. And
you keep your mouth shut and your eyes open, sugar, is what he'd say to me. You keep your mouth shut and your eyes open, sugar.
So after all of these years, you mentioned the 80s. I remember Axl Rose wanting to record some Manson songs, him having the picture of Charlie on there, people being outraged. I don't know if you remember all this. So there was this resurgence. There were always these movies. Then came some biographies, documentaries about Sharon's life, which I thought was great, but not enough. They were always about the killers, the killers, the killers. Fast forward to, you've been approached by many people to do, because you own Sharon's life rights. And
Roman signed those over to me.
Yeah.
Back in the day, he made Dad the executor of her estate here in Los Angeles, just the physical estate. He always retained intellectual and artistic licensing until he gave that to me.
Do you still speak to Roman at all?
Yes, I do. Oh. I love Roman.
Yeah.
I do.
When all of this, so I'm curious because she gets approached by different people that want to do different projects. I'll just tell you quickly from my side. She was approached by Quentin Tarantino. And my first reaction was, yes, that's the one we go with, because Quentin has a way, and I remember saying this to you, of rewriting history. It was my dream. I never thought in a million years. I didn't know. But I thought, if anyone can do this movie. And I felt, what happened when you got the call? How did he get a hold of you? What happened? What transpired? Because you guys ended up spending a lot of time together.
Gene Kurtowski, Roman's best friend, his son, or stepson actually, Adam Bardock, who is a producer, and his attorney is one of Quentin's attorneys. So when Quentin wanted to reach me, in conversation, I got to dig me up, Debra Tate, blah, blah, blah. His attorney approached Adam. Adam called me and said, I don't know if you want to, you don't want to, but here's the information, call Quentin. Quentin actually got a hold of me. Quentin gave me the script to take home.
Was it already called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at that
sure
point?
was. I'll tell you
nice.
what. There's a funny.
You're so good. She didn't say a word. She kept her mouth zipped, and because I know you had an agreement with Quentin, but
I gave him my word. My word is
it's gold.
better
Than you didn't even tell me.
Non-disclosure.
She did not say the name of it. She read it. Not until we went to the premiere together. You said 0.0, and I didn't want to know, but
He let you read the script?
yes.
And this is if you look at
Brad Pitt, he says that she read it before Brad.
But the thing is it's Quentin's original script, and Brad told a story where one time you read it, it's got a couple of stains and a couple of dog ears, and the next time it goes around, it's got a coffee cup ring. Well, that's the same script I had on my bed, and I'm reading it in my bed, and I've got papers up and papers down and sticking out of my piles on things I want to revisit, the way I read things.
Because you're absorbing your sister's
I'm absorbing
life
this
and
whole
her
thing.
Yeah, and this is
And
her
I knew I was going to go back and see Quentin the next day, and I had to have
notes.
my notes in my head. I didn't write notes. I never do. I just
Did he know at that point who was going to play her in the part?
Yes, he knew exactly what he was doing by then. But previous to that, there was a TMZ approached me with a Who'd You Rather with Jennifer
God, I
Lawrence
remember
and
that.
Margot Robbie, and I just shot
Margot.
right off the top, Margot. He said, "Why?" Well,
Well, look at Margot.
I'm kind of uncensored. I said, because Jennifer's not pretty enough.
Jeez. Deb
Oh
took some
my
shit
God,
for that.
did I ever take shit for that? Now, Jennifer is beautiful,
of
and
course.
I identify with her and my look or my level, or what I should say, what I was when I was her age. I could totally identify with that. But Sharon was a showstopper.
Like Margot Robbie.
She couldn't blend into a crowd on, if she tried. So that was my reasoning, not having anything.
And at that point, but you didn't
slam
know
her.
she had been cast.
No, but she
Is
had.
that crazy?
When you were reading the script, because so much of that movie when Sharon is on screen is just the most beautiful visuals, but she doesn't necessarily have lines.
No.
So when you're reading the script, how were you understanding his vision to go back and talk to him about it the next day?
Well, I had my questions, and he explained his vision and how he saw things, and it made sense, but there were a few things that really needed to change.
I remember you saying to me, I don't know if I like her as you didn't, without giving anything away, you said, I don't know if I like certain things about this. And I know you asked him about it, and he kept reassuring you. And I remember the night of the premiere when we were sitting there.
I actually questioned him on whether or not he could pull it off. I told him, Debra Tate's telling Quentin Tarantino, in particular, it was the Steve McQueen character. I said, how can you pull this off? These are very famous people. I've seen this try to happen in other movies, and it's pretty much always the kiss of death. Quentin knew he could do it.
You mean
And
the
he
actor himself, the British actor who played from
and all of the other famous characters that are very briefly on screen.
Mama
but still,
Cass
how
and-
the hell can you pull this stuff off? And I asked him just like that. I said, this is really going to be a tough one. I didn't have much faith in the man in that regard, but in his explanation, you know what? I knew that he could do it. And that's pretty much the way it was with anything that I had questioned. I did have a couple of staunch points that he took into consideration and pretty much kept.
When you read the script, did you feel like, when I was watching it with you, I felt it was a love letter, not only to Hollywood, but to Sharon, because when they played her on screen, I remember saying to Deb, oh my God, we're sitting here with Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, and there's Sharon. He brought her to life.
And when he talked to me about that scene, he was like a kid in a candy store. He was so excited over that visual
of that Matt Helm
watching
movie.
Sharon, what is supposed to be Sharon from the back. It's really Margot from the back, watching her, the real Sharon on screen. He was so excited over that.
And the movie she was watching
delicious.
was
real Sharon footage.
It was 13
Mad
Chairs.
it was Matt Helm, the Dean Martin.
Dean Martin, yes. She's very funny, and she has all of these physically...
It's called Wrecking Crew.
Wrecking Crew.
I'm
duh.
sorry, I had a senior moment.
So did
there.
I. The Wrecking Crew. And she has great physical comedy scenes where she falls, and there's pratfalls, and there's moments where she gets to have the funny one-liners. And so I thought, I love that he picked that particular Matt Helm movie because it really showcased that fun side of her.
Yeah.
As opposed to, we've been listening for so many years about the death and destruction. Deb said something to me before we get back to Quentin. I remember you once said to me, you know, this woman had 26 blessed years. I mean, she was always the most beautiful. She was the kindest, the sweetest. She had a great career. She wanted to be a mom. She'd probably rather that than anything else. She had a husband. And this life in Beverly Hills, the last 45 minutes of her life were hell on earth. But the first 26 years, and I remember you saying that, and
They
it
were
really
blessed.
Blessed, yeah.
Absolutely blessed.
And speaking of that, when you read the script and then even seeing the movie, how hard was that for you to see? Like, I mean, of course you would have wished that was the ending, the fairy tale ending.
If only,
So-
I said, if only.
Reading that script, I would have been like, oh God, I mean, this is the fairy tale I wish had happened.
Exactly.
Oh.
I went back to the hotel
meet
after
Quentin,
reading
to
the
meet with-
first three quarters of the script, and we discussed everything until about 10 or 11 o'clock at night, ending it at the bar. I always go home. He's a perfect gentleman, by
Yeah.
the way.
Did he
but
have to speak to you? Going back to, you have the rights to your sister's life story. So in order to include her, he had to basically get you to sign off and be involved?
no, he did not.
God, then how respectful and amazing
Yes.
of him that he did that.
Now,
Yeah.
That's
people,
incredible.
I love that he
I
did
can
it.
choose whether or not I want to go after somebody or not. Technically, they do not have to. A lot of people, most productions, go ahead and blow it off. But I can come after you, and I will win under
Yeah.
those circumstances
She
because
doesn't give
I
up.
own the licensing. He did the right thing without being asked or told.
And I also
He's
said
so
to Deb at
charming.
the time, he is a charming guy, but I also said to Deb at the time, he wants your insight, your stamp of approval, because that gives the film validity. It also showcases that he's done his homework.
Yes.
And then Deb, you met with Margot Robbie. Tell us a little bit about that experience, because here's the woman that's going to portray the woman that you knew.
Oh my gosh.
So what?
So she came down and she met with me and spent an afternoon with me.
on set.
No, before set. Actually, in my friend Catherine's house, because I didn't want her to have to drive
Yeah.
all the way to Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
So we picked a
Mutual place, middle ground.
middle ground, but a private place because Margot, like Sharon, stands out in a crowd, and we had work to do. So
Yeah,
she
it wouldn't
had
work at Starbucks.
Right.
Yeah.
She asked very specific questions, trying to get gestures. We did walking, talking, laughing, had questions. She held my beautiful little bacon puppy. I've got great pictures of that, but I instantly liked Margot.
And is not affected by the Hollywood.
Not affected
yeah.
at all.
It
And not
doesn't seem like
affected
it.
by
Yeah.
her beauty.
Yeah, she
You
is
know?
one great beauty. I just
She-
saw her the other night, and I was like, yeah, this just, wow, you stare at that face.
Now, it's not Sharon's face,
Nope.
but no face will ever be
No.
Sharon's face. So you've got to capture her
Essence.
spirit, her essence. And Margot did it. She did it. She nailed it. And I don't think you can act that either. I think the reason she did it is because she has it.
Yeah, she's authentic too.
She's authentic.
Now
Yeah.
go back to, you said you were in the hotel room with Quentin. You'd read
With Quentin,
3/4 of the script.
3/4, and I come back in the next day. We spend an entire day discussing things and him explaining my questions away by almost going through a directorial vision. You've got words on a page in black and white. You can't see what's in a director's head.
Especially his head. It's
Especially
Quentin.
his head. Actually, we had a wonderful interlude in the beginning. I'm going to back up and share that for a minute. So we meet, hello, and he says, looks down at his feet and kind of said, Quentin's a big guy, looks down at his feet and says, I hear you're kind of a badass. I said, who, me? A little bit. I said, not me. And I really meant it. I said,
what is he
me.
referring to? I wonder what he heard. Was it just you're facing the
Maybe the fact that I stand up and, say what I think or what, who knows why he said that. But I was taken aback. I said, who, me? Not me. And then I said, well, maybe. It depends on what side of the fence you're sitting on. I said, no, it's a Tate thing. I said, everybody starts with 100 points and then you start earning your demerits. He said, I like that. I think I'm going to adopt that from now on. I give you a chance. My mother and father would say, you give them enough rope, they'll hang themselves. So I give it, everybody gets the same chance. You could be an axe murderer or a Manson murderer and come at me the right way with honesty and purity of heart. I will see it, feel it, and let you have your chance.
You have, and I can speak to that firsthand at the hearings. You have always spoken to the murderers with respect. And she always says, I don't hold a grudge against you. I wish you the best because, but I don't think you deserve to be out. And that's where, we all agree. You did these heinous things. You shouldn't be free to breathe the same air that I'm breathing because I want my kids to be safe. Okay. That's one thing I've learned from you. And I think you got that from your mom, right? Do you think Doris? Because she was so very decent to these people. I would have lunged across the table and punched them in the fucking face. I don't know what I would.
Well, back in the day when Dad went to those trials and I wanted to go to those trials, he says, no. You can't go because back in the day, if there was anybody that was going to go across a table,
it'd be you.
It was going to be me.
Yeah.
And so you are a badass.
I could take you out with one thumb behind your larynx and pop it out.
She can. She doesn't fuck around, I know.
I can and I would, especially back in that day during the trial. First of all, back in those days, death penalty, I wasn't on board with the death penalty back then.
I didn't know that.
No, I was not. Because it made me feel like I was taking a life just like they had done to me. And then I grew up and I started seeing what our societal problems are. And I would much rather take the money that this state spends on supporting. Now, it has to be a case by case
scenario.
Yes. We can't have blanket laws. Everything has to be looked at as an individual. But when you have a rabid animal, you take it out. Mm-hmm. It's just that.
That's it.
That simple. I don't believe in all of these appeals. The heinous predatory killers in this state usually die of natural causes in old age.
Well, because they have so many appeals, right?
Exactly.
So they end up
guess who's paying for those appeals? Leslie Van Houten, you don't know. Okay, she was overturned in the Superior Court. They kicked it back. Her attorney sat in front of the California Appeals Court and said, I don't care. I'm filing again, and we will file again and again and again and again.
And guess what? They did.
And they did. So right now, she's got another parole hearing. She's got an appeals case in the Superior Court and in the appeals court, all at the same time.
So these are things that she goes to.
All on taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, I personally know, we all know, but I've researched the knowledge involved. The only cure for criminality is education.
Yeah.
So if not in the case of sociopaths or psychopaths, but everybody else,
too far gone.
They're too far gone, quite frankly. That's a personality factor and a psychological factor that will never change. So they should never be trusted in a free society. That's what these people are. They are sociopath. You are not diagnosed a sociopath yesterday and then 50 years later say you're no longer a sociopath. If you have those personality factors, you will die with those personality factors. You are first a narcissist, then you can escalate into sociopath, and then you can escalate to a psychopath. You can go from psychopath back down to sociopath, but you're never going back down to normal, not even a narcissist, okay? So we know they aren't coming back. I'm sorry, they're not coming back. They're not the same people. If they're high functioning in a controlled society, i.e. prison, where they can't hurt anybody else, I am so for it. And I say, God bless your your program training companion dogs. I am so glad you can help with new incoming inmates, you know. Be highly functioning and normal within these walls, and God bless it. But I'm sorry, I can't trust that you're ever coming back, because all the science in the world says you're not, that you should not be trusted.
And if you're capable of doing what they did for shits and giggles, is what they did it. It was just for nothing more than that. There was no thought behind it other than they knew the layout of the house.
There was no passion.
There was no nothing. It was carnage. It was absolute, utter.
For predatory reasons.
Yes, correct. So
just to kill.
I don't care how old you are. If you're 19 or you're 25, you were capable of doing that then. You're capable again. And I want to mention, because we've heard so much about the Manson family and what they're capable of, I want to mention what is a beautiful tribute is a book that you did called Recollection about Sharon's life. And I think it's important because Deb, when all of those photographers that took those thousands and thousands of pictures, they have the rights, essentially. Deb, because of her relationship, because of the photographer's relationship with Sharon and how much they loved her, Deb would call them and say, right, I want to use this photo. And they're like, okay. She went to 20th Century Fox.
I did have to buy a picture from 20th Century Fox. Everybody else gave me the picture.
And of her on red carpets and movies and beauty.
Various things.
Everything.
Campaigns. Oh,
and then I would get not just my recollections of Sharon, as a matter of fact, I only have a couple in there, but go to friends, high school friends.
Actors that worked with her, producers.
So because the purpose of the book was to give her a life, to give a new generation of people a snippet of who and what she was. She did 6 movies, 250 magazine covers worldwide, basically in 6 years.
Like, that's insane.
And then at the same time she's doing all this, can make each and every person that cross her path feel like they are the only and most important person in the world. She was a magnificent spirit, a special creature. And that's why I did the book.
Do you think she would have given up Hollywood for being a mother?
I think so.
Yeah, I do too.
One of the things that you said a little bit ago, that you would have been the one if you had gone to these trials, been jumping across the table. So part of grief is anger and rage.
Yeah. Yes.
How have you gotten to this place? I mean, to write or to put together, compile a book like Recollection, you have to be in a totally different space.
Or to face the killers. I've seen her face these people, and you're so calm. She's very law-driven. She's not personal. It's not about her, what happened to her and her family.
It's not a vendetta.
It's not a vendetta.
I'm fair. I am fair. I am a very
Sometimes
fair
I'm
creature.
like, oh my God, like she's so fair. Like, I want to get personal. You know what I mean? Like,
The way the journey is through self-examination. I put myself in check all the time. I think that's why basically I'm still here, is because I do put myself in check, and I try to look at things. I have my point of view, and then I try to look at things from every other possible point of view so that I can get a full, deep understanding of not only the situation, but myself in that situation. And sometimes I might be wrong and find that I need to put a little adjustment, a little spin on myself and get that crap or that anger out of me. And I'd jump on the back of a horse and go, do 500 miles across the Mojave Desert in a little endurance race called the Mojave. Now it's called the Mojave 100. By the way, back in the day, it used to be the Mojave 500. And it's really grueling. So I was crazy in that way. I would express things physically.
Do you feel, I mean, because you just said the next generation, and I do think Quentin's movie shows Sharon in a light that
I do.
There's a generation that probably didn't even know of her.
Exactly.
Such a gorgeous energy and light. And you talk about when she passed away, you felt her energy was gone.
Right.
Do you feel her energy around you at any point now?
You know, I have in the past. It used to be a lot. And there came a point where I had a very weird dream, and I can still do this, but I can do it with other people. I've always been able to, quote unquote, see dead people. I started when I was 6 years old. I sat up in bed in Italy and said, "Mama, Papa's dead." And I never had a relationship with my mother's father because we were military and always traveling, and I was only 6 years old, so how much of a relationship did I have? But my grandfather came to me to tell me why he didn't get me a pony, and my two cousins had them, you know, really. And I knew Papa was dead, and he told me at the end of that conversation. He explained why I didn't have a pony, and he explained that it was time for him to go and he would see me sometime in the future. So anyway.
And he had just passed away?
He had just passed away.
That's crazy.
45 minutes later, the phone call
my
came
God.
in that he had died. Yeah.
I'm curious about you owning the intellectual rights and everything of Sharon's. You also own all of her physical items. We're talking Sharon's life and
that wasn't stolen. And there is a particular individual that has stolen quite a lot.
yeah. So there's an auction that did Marilyn Monroe. It did Audrey Hepburn. It's done Cher, Jane Fonda,
Everybody, anybody and
Prince,
everybody.
Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison. And so we did a lot of research and wanted things to go to, you know, a positive place. And you had trunks and bags filled because they were at your dad's for a long time, right? All of her stuff.
They were at in mom's closet, yeah, in a hope chest.
So did you ever feel, because I know I got the responsibility of storing stuff here while Deb was in transition. So I stored basically Sharon's life. So from her coats to her Fendi glasses to her scarves, her makeup.
I still have a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you know, physical connection when you feel it, like it was so personal. I always felt really positive around it. And I didn't want it here for a long time. Even though I have an alarm and I have a system, I knew the value. And then it went to Julian's.
And that's an auction house?
It
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
But I felt so positive around when people would say, oh, you have Sharon's picture. Well, yeah, that's from Deb. I love it. It's the picture on the Book of Recollections. When the clothes were here, I would tell Ruby how important her wedding dress, when you had, because I always felt very positive around it because she was so positive. Did you ever feel going through her stuff, giving it to the auction people, that it felt like it was tangible? Or was it sort of like these represented her, but it's not? Because I always felt like she'd want you to have that, but then kind of move on.
Well, it's a personal thing for me to guard everything down to the bitter end. And that was my intention. The reason being, I was always fearful of what kind of people, because I do know the creepier side. I'm approached all the time. I envisioned, you know, death worshippers
there's a
doing
lot of the
ritual,
darkness.
Darkness on her items. So, I mean, I'd be damned if you're going to get something out from underneath my nose. A lot of stuff did go out under the nose of my little sister when she moved into my mother's house after she passed away, and the stuff was still there. And another individual actually
took a lot
of stuff. And my dad called up and said, you give all this to Deb. This is Deb's. And the woman returned a lot of it, but helped herself to a lot of it. As my little sister is laying there dying, she was busy ripping everything out of family albums and stuffing things up in the attic because she was afraid I was going to come in right after the funeral and snatch away the dreams. That was the furthest thing from my mind as my little sister died. You know, when Patty died, I almost didn't get back up again.
Oh.
You know, I'd lost my mother. I'd lost Sharon.
Doris,
then I lost my mother. Then I lost
your dad,
Patty.
and your dad.
Dad was the last one.
But we didn't talk about Doris had a brain tumor cancer.
Glioblastoma.
But she did get to meet with President Bush Sr., 1,000 Points of Light.
Right.
And she was one of his 1,000 Points
Yeah,
of Light.
you know how Mom got that?
You?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Me
amazing.
and two ladies from her Parents of Murdered Children
Oh, that's
group.
incredible.
We petitioned the president for that.
Do you think with the success of Quentin Tarantino's movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that this sort of resurgence of realizing who Sharon Tate was, I wonder if it's a time to revisit the Star on the Walk of Fame, to bring it full circle how you and I met. I'm curious because Johnny Grant is no longer around, and I know for a fact one of his concerns, and I was dumbfounded because I wrote a letter and being in the media at the time, because I knew what you had to do. You had to get a certain amount of people behind you. You had to have like $15,000. They were like concerned that there were going to be Manson-ites on her star. Like this was going to be some sort of a meeting place. And I was like, what? It's about Sharon Tate. This isn't about Charles Manson. But they didn't get it. And I remember thinking, I felt so pissed off and yet defeated that I remember talking about it on the air saying, have you seen some of these yahoos who have stars on the Walk of Fame? They're reality idiots. What are you talking about? Like, so I feel like now, if anything, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce would realize. But is that something you would even care about at this point?
Well, I've revisited that a couple of times. And now that you mention it, it's been a secret, but you know that I'm friends with Dave Navarro.
Yes.
Dave Navarro, I've given him my blessing. He wants to get Sharon a star. And I will sign all the paperwork because a relative, I'm the only relative, has to sign the paperwork. It's still a battle because they are concerned that it will attract the ugliest element along with the good, you know.
Well, maybe if
it's kind of like, you know, people coming up and damaging. Whose star was it most recently?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump or whatever. And I might have done that one myself. But
for those of you who don't know, Dave Navarro and Deb have a special relationship. Dave Navarro's mother was murdered. And you might know him from the Red Hot Chili Peppers or from Jane's Addiction. He was married to Carmen Electra. He's one of the coolest people that I know, that you know, and he's an advocate. He did a whole documentary, if you haven't seen it. It's called Morning Sun, MOURNING. I'm glad to hear that. And I think that what better person than Dave to get that done. I'm bummed out to hear that that's still an issue that they would have.
As I would have to, the Hollywood Walk of Fame is all about bringing revenue to Hollywood. So the whole thing is, who can I produce to come forward to present the star? So, I mean, I would receive the star, but I could certainly petition Quentin.
Margot.
Exactly.
Come on.
Maybe the guys would come out if I was really lucky.
Yeah.
I must say that the
by the guys, she means Brad and Leo.
Brad and Leo.
That's what she calls the guys.
Brad and
those
Leo.
boys.
You know, I must say, really nice, normal, down to earth, kind.
Ugly.
Yeah, ugly. Can't look at them. They're so unattractive.
Hideous.
Quentin has got an absolutely amazing support. He puts teams together that are unbelievable.
And he stays with them forever.
And he stays with them forever. The vibe on the set is just unreal. You have to check your cell phones in with Checkpoint Charlie, they call him. So there's no cameras, there's no cell phones, there's no communication.
There's no distraction.
There's no distraction. There's no bullshit.
Yeah.
It's all about work, a happy environment. He gives everybody what they need and expects
So when did you find out the end of how he was going to end the movie?
At the end of the 3 days. And it was explained to me that there were a lot of people, a lot of high-powered people that never got to read that last coveted ending. And I gave him my word. He asked for it. I said, you've got my word. And I'm the kind of gal, I give you my word. That's it.
Yep. We went to the premiere. She said nothing. I was excited to see how he was going to portray it. And
I asked him, I said, you know, I'm going to have to say something to Roman. And I need to ask you what I can say. And he started talking. I said, look, can I just say this? Can I say it's not going to be what you would expect? And he said, yeah, that would be okay. So that's all I would tell anybody. In the beginning of meeting with him, I said, you know, given the subject of the Manson murders and Quentin Tarantino, there's an automatic leap that takes place in between the years in the gray matter, that you actually run a scenario, a quick vignette of the possible scenes in that movie. And I said, you have to forgive me, but you know, we've gone there. Given your name, I've already been down that road in my mind, knowing the Tarantino signature style,
right? How he could portray it
and the subject matter. But I was expecting something totally different than the script that was plunked down in front of me.
Did you not ever, like my mind? I remember saying to you, he's known for rewriting history. You didn't think for one second?
No.
I thought Inglourious Bastards right away.
Right. Well, the Nazis and Hitler.
soon
Right.
as she said Tarantino and she was skeptical, I don't know, because, it's her sister's life. And I remember thinking about it for a few days and I thought, oh my God, what if? Because he's Tarantino.
And she said, what if? And I never let on.
No.
Never let on.
I said, what if he does like an Inglourious Bastards where the Jews come back and kill the fucking Nazis? I was when I saw it, I was like, well, I think for me, even more so than the ending, I loved seeing her on screen.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
It freaked me. I was like, what? Sharon's on. Oh my God.
I let
it
the
was like
surprise. I knew he was going to do that, but I let the surprises be the surprises. And that's it.
He brought her to life
I'm
again.
not going to take away anybody's cookies.
No, you didn't. You definitely didn't. You definitely did not do that. So what is next? Who is up for parole? Who is blah, blah, blah?
Leslie's on deck again.
Of course she is.
And later
Davis?
this year, no, Tex is coming around.
I thought we got him 5 years.
Well, honey, 5 means 3. Because after 3 years, you can put in for the petition to advance. So all you have to do is take a 3-month is the minimum
course?
that I know of, self-help course.
Oh my God. And this is the guy who started a ministry.
You write a letter to the warden and petition for a sooner parole date.
This is the guy who, quote, found God. He wrote a book. He started a ministry behind bars, got married, had 4 children that all went to very good, like Brigham Young University.
Brigham Young.
It's wow. So that means that if people go to noparoleformansonfamily.com, they can click on his picture and sign. And here we go again.
Please sign. We need all of them.
Your signature matters because when we dropped off all those signatures in Brown's office, which is now Governor Newsom's office, it made a difference to physically see that bulk of signatures from California residents that do not want these people out. It makes a difference.
Yes. Not even the parole board has brought up and made a point that it's not just California, it's American citizens and even world citizens, people that subscribe to the petition all over the world. So nobody wants these people as their neighbors, not when they stop and really think about what that means. It might be a popular thing to say, I'm a liberal, or I have forgiveness. I'm a Christian. I have forgiveness. You need to stop and think about what it really means. These are people that band together for no good reason at all, started hunting human beings and making party favors out of their demise. They did it for the sheer pleasure.
They did. And that's the scariest part of all.
And nobody needs that as a neighbor. We should not ever have to think about these people again. There's a whole lot of states where people are literally put away for life.
Yeah, life means life.
Life means life.
You bring up something. I remember interviewing The Doors, Ray Manzarek and Robbie Densmore, and I specifically asked them, when did you feel like the 60s were over for you? And it could have been Jim Morrison's death, 1971, it could have been. And they said, the night of the Sharon Tate murders. And I remember thinking, wow. And they were not alone. A lot of people independently, Henry Fonda said the same thing to me. Because it was so random and so scary for people and so senseless. And I think that's the bottom line. And also, if you were sorry for something you did, wouldn't you want to just repent in your cell? Be like, I don't ever want to see the face of light again because I'm a fucking asshole and I did do that. And if that's what my punishment is, then I'm going to take it. If I'm sorry for what I did, I'll take it.
That's what I would do.
I would.
I'll tell you what, if it were me, honestly, and I've put myself in their shoes many a time, I'd kill myself. All right? I wouldn't want to take a taxpayer dollar if I truly, all of a sudden, the fog cleared.
Yeah.
And I could do my little introspectives like I do on myself and came up with the aha moment of, oh my God, I am batshit crazy and I've taken multiple people's lives that I had no reason, no rhyme for. That's it. I'd do myself in. I wouldn't make anybody else make that decision or that call. I actually have a little bit of respect for those guys that decide to go ahead and take care of their own problemed current version of self. I do believe that that they'll get some kind of a reward if you have clarity.
If you have clarity.
If you have clarity.
I don't think...
When you don't have clarity and you don't address the issue and there are still secrets and you know of other bodies buried out there and other crimes committed and you're keeping the big secrets, you're not reformed.
Also,
and that's what these people are.
I want to mention that heinous and senseless and brutal and barbaric as these crimes were, they made sandwiches after a night at the La Bianca's. They showered, I believe, in their shower.
At their house.
After they murdered them.
Yes, with the bodies laying.
Yeah, Rosemary heard her husband being stabbed and she was screaming, and they put a pillowcase over her head and a cord from a lamp around her neck, and they were laughing at her because she was running all over, because she was banging into things, because she couldn't see anything, but she could only hear her husband. They're not human. Humans don't do that. You don't feel that way when you're seeing humans don't do that. So,
and like I said, if by some chance, I mean, I can't, we're a sum total of our own experiences. I would never be in that position in the first place because I wouldn't let it go that far. I would have told those people to take a flying leap off a cliff. When I was approached for that, it would have been very ugly right then and there.
You would have taken, if you were a Kasabian, take your daughter and get out of Dodge.
Yeah, goodbye. See ya. You want to kill me on the way out? That's fine. Go ahead and try.
A lot of the people would still be in it if it weren't for, like, they would sit at the corner of Temple and Broadway with their X's in their head, their whatever it was, the X's card, and their shaved head. So those people like the Sandra Goods, the Squeaky Froms, the Ruth Ann Morehouses.
Oh, and guess what?
Catherine
people
Gillies.
Like Squeaky Fromm, she married another murderer. And Leslie Van Houten had a 16-year, although by pen, sexual in nature relationship with a killer that was incarcerated for a double homicide, one in Texas and the other one in Illinois. And she had a sexual pen pal relationship with him for 16 years. The only reason it stopped was because he killed himself when he lost his last appeal that state. Now, that tells me something. Squeaky Fromm's hooked up with a killer, that has been released. These people are still attracted to the same kind of man. How reformed are you? I am sorry. Do a little self-policing in 50 years. How about that?
Yeah.
How about that?
Does that stuff come up in her parole hearings?
I bring it up. I make sure it comes up.
See, you are a badass.
Yeah.
And I'm still my daddy's little spy.
Well, I think it's important for people to be mindful, do their civic duty. And if you are concerned, please be concerned, because I've seen how close the tipping scale is for these people to get out. And I can't tell you how many people have said to me, oh, you go to those? Like, they're never getting out. If I had $1 for everyone who said that, I'd be a millionaire, because that's the general thought, and it's wrong to think that way. So anyway, if you do...
And it could be, very unfortunately, and with great sadness I say this, it could be your brother, your sister, your mother,
God
your
forbid,
father,
your child. Exactly. And so if you go to noparoleformansonfamily.com, it's very simple. AJ has made it so beautifully easy.
Who is AJ? You referenced him.
AJ is my unpaid assistant. He actually started helping my mother when she was alive. He is amazing. So valuable.
He's an advocate as well.
Oh, big time. Yeah. And he makes it so she can go out and do the physical advocacy and get signatures, and then he'll make everything very concise. I mean, let's say it's the website, so that you can go on and give a signature, and then we can print them out. And again, it takes 30 seconds. It's not like back in the day when Doris was campaigning and you were campaigning. You can sit in your living room and do it and still have that impact, which is so important. Like, that's the beauty of the world.
People don't realize it, but a few years ago, we had a young man who was murdered. His name was Blaze Bernstein in Orange County by a group called Atomwaffen. This is a neo-Nazi-esque kind of a group, and it's becoming very prevalent here, especially they've had problems in the Huntington Beach High School area. This is a big thing. I was warned by the security team at Corcoran Prison years ago.
That's where Charles Manson was.
Where Charlie was, that there was a group then. They told me that there were in excess of 80 cells across the United States. Frontline, who does a show,
A great show.
great show for PBS. You can see it online. It's called Hate in America. But these people, Adam Woffen, worship Charles Manson and the doctrine that he did. And we have had numerous deaths perpetrated by people outside the Manson family, but they are buying into the train of thought. There's a resurgence of that train of thought.
Crazy train.
Crazy train of thought. And this Blaze Bernstein was one victim of that. There was another circumstance, I believe it was in Pennsylvania. There's been several. And you need to watch this. Look it up on the computer. Give it a look. It'll make your blood run cold. It's happening again, people. The last thing we need is one of these core Manson family individuals to come
free,
out.
and they look how many disciples they would have automatically.
Yeah.
For you, keeping the core, I say the core 5, right? Is
Right.
it 5 at
Five
this
I
point?
have left, yeah.
Jeez. The only 2 are dead are Manson and Adkins.
Right.
So the ones that are out there still are in prison that still need to stay there is Bruce Davis, Leslie Van Houten, Patricia Krenwinkel, Tex Watson, and
Bobby Bouzoulet.
Bobby Bouzoulet. That's right.
Let us not forget Bobby.
Bobby Bouzoulet. That's right. It's almost like there's this one comes up and then you fight that and then you got 6 months in between.
Satan worshiper, Bobby Bouzoulet.
Yeah. And then she's like, oh, got to go back. I go, but we were just there. We just got the signature. Oh, I know, but this is for so-and-so. I'm like, holy shit, this could go on it goes on forever.
It must have been such a nice reprieve to have something like Quentin's movie where it was such a positive
love letter
experience and love letter to your sister and to remind the world of who she was and what she did.
It was. It is. It still is because it's still happening.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's got its own legs. It's got its own
Good.
fandom.
Yay, good.
It's
Yes.
brought more people into the Sharon Tate clubs. It makes people aware. And my whole purpose is trying to keep my whole family's dead. I know very clearly nobody's coming back. Okay. There's nobody more aware of that than myself. But I'll be damned if I'm going to sit idly while it happens to someone else's. I have to die trying, and I will. I will die trying. I'm not giving it up.
Oh, she won't. She's like a pit bull.
I'm like
She
a
gets
pit bull.
on. She's not letting go.
I was born red,
Yeah.
okay? Natural red hair.
Oh, I love, not to backtrack, but in the back of the book Recollection, you see pictures of Deb on Sharon's property on Cielo, and you're wearing this great fringe dress. Is it Sharon's?
It was Sharon's, yes.
It's so beautiful. Deb's hair is so long and red, and you must have been all of 16 at
That's
the time.
right. That's
yeah.
right.
So ending on a happy note, the book is, I believe, on Amazon still, is it not?
I believe it is.
You can check it out. It's called Recollection. In the meantime, we really urge you to go to noparoleformansonfamily.com, take 20 seconds, sign. You're doing the right thing, and it helps. It helps with the cause. It helps Deb when she goes up to the governor's office. It helps in every way, shape, and form keep people away from your families, these horrible people.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. I love you.
Love you too.